up, everyone? Welcome back to C&D Sports. A little bit of a different setup today. We'll be remote until the new year, but different setup, same quality content that you guys expect. And we've got some good quality content today in our November NBA Power Rankings. So, like we did for the NHL, we're going to start from the bottom, work our way up to the top here. So, without further ado, let's get going.
Let's get right into it. And at the bottom, very disappointing season. You want to see some progression from these guys, but the New Orleans Pelicans, they're just awful.
They are awful. And I mean, the biggest excuse that Pelicans fans or just any basketball fan are going to use is the fact that Zion Williamson has been out all year. But the supporting cast does need to be better, because if this is the effort that they're putting up to convince Zion to stay, I'd hate to see what it looks like if they're trying to convince him to leave. So overall, they're a bottom 5 offense in basketball, which is pretty unacceptable considering that they have such a dominant front court, even without Zion, with JV and Brandon Ingram. Devontae Graham has been solid this year, but it really comes down to the depth hasn't been there. This team just hasn't come together like we expected.
Yeah, no glue there. At 29, as expected, I mean, they should be 30, but it's Houston. The Rockets, they're rebuilding, right?
They are rebuilding, and this is to be expected. We had them 30 on our preseason rankings. But again, there is lots of hope. I've been impressed with what I've seen from Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., Alperen Sengun, and so on. The list goes on. Again, lots of hope for the future, but just not right now.
Yep. And then at 28, another team that's disappointing and that you want to progress at some point, the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah. Again, I feel like I can't say it's as expected, because when you have guys like Karl Anthony Towns and you have guys like Anthony Edwards, you do expect them to be better. But the fact of the matter is they've lost 6 straight. They're really cold right now. But it is just Minnesota being Minnesota. That's just what they've turned out to be year in and year out. I want to say that they'll get better, and they've still been heavily rumored for Ben Simmons. Whether they can make that happen, I think Ben Simmons could help this team, but again, this isn't about Ben Simmons here. This is about the power rankings, and right now they're not playing well this year, so they have to be in the bottom 3. When you lose 6 straight, they're with Houston and the Pelicans. They're one of the coldest teams in basketball right now.
Yep, at 27, we have the Detroit Pistons.
Now, this is as expected. Growing pains, I think Cade Cunningham is going to be good, especially now that they have him. It was a rough debut for him, but Cade Cunningham receiving high praise from Kevin Durant, saying that he's going to be a tough guard. But at the end of the day, they are still the worst offensive team in the NBA. The only reason they're at 27 here is because they beat Houston the other night, so I can't put Houston ahead of them, knowing that Detroit beat them. So. But at 2-8, it's going to be a rough year for Pistons fans. But I mean, lots of hope for the future, though.
Yep, and then another team that's on the rise, but in the future, the Orlando Magic, who we have at 26.
Yeah, I mean, a good season for Cole Anthony. He's been balling out this year. Franz Wagner's been solid. Jalen Suggs has been solid. So again, lots of hope for the future, but this is expected for a rebuilder to be in the bottom 5 of these power rankings here. You can't really expect them to go much higher, but 3 and 9, not terrible for such a young team.
Yep, and then the Atlanta Hawks have disappointed so far, so we have them at 25.
Yeah, I think disappointed is also an understatement here. They've been the biggest disappointment so far. To go to the conference finals and to be, to lose in 6 games, they were close. They played the Bucks close, very well, had a shot at the title last year. To be 4-8 to start the year, they've got to be better. And it's on both sides of the ball too. I think offensively they could be better. Defensively they could be better. But they have had an extremely hard schedule. There have not been too many easy games for the Hawks. So I think the Hawks, once they start gelling again, I don't think they can go any lower on this list based on the teams that are below them.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say they can't go any lower. It's only up from here. Not a whole lot to say. It just hasn't been a good start for Atlanta, but it hasn't been a good start. It's the start's not going to define their season, in my opinion.
It shouldn't. There's too much talent for them to be playing like this, so there has to be a bounce back at some point. Maybe coaching changes are what's required, but at 24 we have Sacramento.
And this is probably, I know some people, I mean, any Kings fans watching, they may not be too impressed with this, considering they are ninth in a play-in position as of right now. But this is just to be expected of the Kings. They're underperforming at 5-7. Solid offensive team, which it is year in and year out when you have guys like De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield. But they're poor defensively. They're on a cold streak right now, and they just haven't wowed me enough to really put them ahead of some of the teams that are below them in the standings that are really gelling right now and have actually played better with tougher schedules. So that's why I have to put Sacramento at 24.
Yep, and at 23, San Antonio is somewhat in the mix here.
Yeah, and I think when you have a coach like Greg Popovich and leadership, especially a growing leader like DeJounte Murray, you should be a solid team. And they're one of the teams that are outside of the play-in picture right now that do still have a positive point differential. So they are scoring more than they are giving up. They have a good win against the defending champions in the Milwaukee Bucks. And they've had a tough schedule so far. So to be 4-7 for a team that there wasn't a whole lot of expectations on, this is a positive 23 as opposed to some other teams that are kind of in the 20s right now.
Yep, and then at 22, OKC down but never out.
Down but never out. When you've got SGA and Lou Dort, usually good things are going to happen. At 4-6, it's not a bad record for them right now. They are on a bit of a hot streak right now as we film today. They've won 3 straight games. But at the end of the day, they do need to up that scoring if they do want a chance to push for a playoff spot. They're the second worst offensive team, only behind the Detroit Pistons right now. But overall, the fact of the matter is, they're winning ball games right now. So as of right now, at 4-6, 22 is not a bad spot for Oklahoma City.
Yep, and then at 21 we have the Charlotte Hornets.
Probably the coolest, trendiest team right now. They're flashy. They're high flying right now. It's just dunk central there. But and it shows because they are the second best offensive team in the NBA this year, but they're the worst defensive team. I don't know how they can continue to hover around 500 with the extreme difference in the fact that, yeah, they're so good offensively, but they're so bad defensively. You kind of get the vibe of Mike D'Antoni coach teams like the Phoenix Suns back with Steve Nash, where it was the 7-second offense, where offense was the best defense in that case, but none of those teams ever won a title. And never made the finals either. So, I mean, there's something to be said about good defense, and Charlotte does need to tighten up on defense if they do want to excel to the expectations that they set for themselves with a surprising season last year. But it's not on guys like Bridges, Ball, and Hayward because they've been solid at the top there. But
it's the surrounding pieces.
It's the surrounding pieces in the defense that I think need to step up for Charlotte.
And then at 20, we have the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, and this is a good spot for the Pacers because I've been impressed with them too. After a very poor start, when I was first formulating this, when we were first formulating these power rankings, I had them a lot lower, probably around the mid-20s because they were off to a bad start. But they've really rallied through these past couple weeks with such a hard schedule too. They have good wins against Miami, the Knicks, and Utah. They're a deep team with 6+ guys, or with 6 guys averaging 10 or more points per game. A couple other guys around the 8-point mark. So they are a very deep team right now. I've been impressed with Chris Duarte, who is looking like a solid finalist, who, if he continues, would be a solid finalist for Rookie of the Year this year. So I've been impressed with Indiana the past couple weeks, but they did have a pretty bad start.
Yep. And then at 19, we have the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, and the Grizzlies are, again, like Sacramento, they are in a spot where they're in a play-in position, but they're the second worst defensive team in basketball. Again, only trailing Charlotte. It's really Ja, and there's little else around him. But now that Dylan Brooks is back, Dylan Brooks has seemed to be their number two guy. So it seems like they should trend upwards here, and the fact that they are 6-5 is saying something. But I think they're a team that you expect a little more out of.
Yep, and then at an 18, we have Portland.
Portland's a team that I want to say is going to get better, but I don't know. They've had a difficult schedule to this point. They've just been giving up too many points, and Damian Lillard's the X factor right now. Is with the new officiating changes, how they're not really calling guys trying to draw fouls off shot fakes. It's really affected his game to the point where he's complained about it. And it's affected his game to the point where he's not their leading scorer. CJ McCollum's averaging more points per game. So obviously something has to click for Dame if this team wants to get above 500 and even make that push for a top 6 guaranteed playoff spot. Because they don't look like a team that could get that right now.
Yep, and then at 17, we have a team that's disappointed so far in the Boston Celtics. Despite the offseason, it just hasn't clicked.
Yeah, it has been disappointing. It was a bad start. They're starting to pick up the pieces. You're starting to see better wins out of them now. Big win over the division rivals in Toronto the other day. And I think the locker room drama between Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum,
And Marcus
Smart, I think that's mellowed out a bit. I think it was kind of blown out of proportion. Marcus Smart does have a point that Tatum and Brown maybe do need to focus on playmaking as opposed to scoring all the time. But at the same time, you also have to agree with Jason Tatum that, you got to trust Jason Tatum. He is the center of the franchise at this point. But overall, they have had a tough schedule to this point, so that can kind of play into 5 and 6. But you expect the Celtics to be a lot better than 5 and 6 through the first 11 games of the season.
Yep, and then at 16, we have Luka Doncic.
Yeah, this is a team that at 16 should be low for a team that's 4th overall in the Western Conference, but they're the only team in a top 6 position in either conference that has a negative point differential. They're just not scoring the ball outside of Luka. They'll have guys having solid nights, but they just lack that consistency, and Luka needs that help. He needs that consistency to move on. And I think the fact that they're 7-4 is also they've had an easier schedule. They have not had a lot of top level matchups to this point. So Dallas is a team that I could see trending downwards if they don't find that sort of consistency.
Yep, and then the Cleveland Cavaliers you have at 15. Proving a lot of people wrong, including us.
Yeah, because we had Cleveland in the bottom 3.
Yes.
When we did our preseason rankings here. The fact that they're 7-5 has been phenomenal. They are, if Atlanta's the biggest disappointment, they have to be the biggest surprise in my opinion.
Yep.
The fact that they're in the top half is amazing. They've got a very deep roster here. They have 8 guys averaging 9 or more points per game here. However, Colin Sexton goes down. He's out for the foreseeable future right now with a knee injury here, so they have to figure out a way to cope without their leader right now. They've been playing well. Their bigs have been playing well, and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, and I think they have to focus on that and kind of lay off the small ball approach, because you lose a lot with an elite two-way player like Colin Sexton.
Yep. So at 14, we have the Toronto Raptors.
And this has been a good start for them. The fact that they're 7-6, they've had good wins against the Boston Celtics, the 76ers the other night, the New York Knicks. They have a top 5 defense in basketball, and I think that speaks volumes to the way that they built their team, as they don't have a guy on their roster above 6'9", but they have a lot of guys that are 6'8" to 6'9", so they have a lot of that pesky reach. That's going to cause a lot of problems. Gary Trent Jr. has been phenomenal when it comes to stealing the ball. And it's been the OG and Scotty show on offense here. Scotty Barnes obviously is the front runner, in my opinion, for Rookie of the Year right now. OG Anunoby is could very well be a contender for comeback player of the year if he keeps playing like this, or most improved player of the year, not comeback player. But at 7-6, this is around 500 is where I anticipated the Raptors on being, but this is a good 7-6. This isn't just kind of a throwaway 7-6 of they've had an easy schedule, because they haven't. They have good wins.
It's sustainable, right?
Yeah.
So they can teeter in this region for the rest of the season, because I don't see them dropping off. If anything, they'd rise.
Exactly.
At 13, the team right above them, the New York Knicks.
And the New York Knicks, this is where I see them finishing just slightly above 500 here. They had a fantastic start, but they have cooled off significantly here. They are 500 against quality teams, which isn't bad by any means, but if the Knicks want to be that top 4 in their conference like they were last year, they do probably have to push that to around 600. But again, Julius Randle is still the king of New York right now. The guy is having a fantastic season. He's proving a lot of people wrong that said that it was just going to be a one-and-done season. And that was something that I worried about too. I didn't guarantee that it was going to be a one-and-done, but I did worry about it. But Julius Randle...
As you should, right?
Yeah.
Like, there were no signs of it before, but yeah, to cast him aside, I don't think makes sense.
But Julius Randle is proving that this is where he belongs and that he should be in the All-Star conversation, and almost a guaranteed All-Star every year if he keeps playing like this.
Yeah. Then at 12, we have the Miami Heat. I mean, they had a great offseason, and it's showing for the most part.
Yeah, it's not showing of the past week or so. They've had a tough week. They've lost 3 straight games. I think Miami, when I was first doing these rankings, they were number 1. So the fact that they've dropped to 12 just shows that they have struggled of recent. And again, I think, like we said for the Knicks, they are 500 against quality teams. For a team to be a title contender like they view themselves, you have to be winning. You have to be winning more often than not against good teams. But they are a good two-way team. Fantastic offensively, fantastic defensively. But yeah, they are on a tough slide, and that's what's slid them down the rankings here.
At 11, we have the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, and the 76ers are a team that have dropped, and even dropped from when I was looking at these power rankings last night. I had them a lot higher in the top 10, but they lose to the Raptors, and their slide without Joel Embiid continues. As until Embiid gets back from COVID, this looks like a team that is very much centered around him and don't really know how to play without him. Yeah. Despite the fact guys like Tyrese Maxey, he's looked fantastic this year, like a great replacement for Ben Simmons. But at the end of the day, they have losses. At the end of the day, they have had a tougher schedule because 2 of their losses have come against the Knicks. One's come against the Raptors, one's come against the Bucks, and one's come against the Nets. So all, I guess, quality losses. They haven't lost to bad teams, but at 8-5, the fact that they have lost, 3 straight, it is going to slide them outside of the top 10.
Yeah, it's tough to be top 10 when you're that close in terms of wins and losses.
Yeah.
Then getting into the top 10, kicking it off with the LA Lakers.
Yeah, and the Lakers had a bad start, and of course they're going to be defined by part of their season is going to be defined by that altercation.
They're dinosaurs. Oh.
Yeah, and the fact that the altercation between Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard just shows that, there is a lot of personality in that locker room. There's a lot of age in that locker room. But so far they've played well. They've been winning without LeBron. Carmelo Anthony's kind of dipped into the fountain of youth here. He's having a great year shooting. But how long can they play through injuries? How long can they continue to play through that age? They're a team that I could see dropping. But they're also a team that you can't count out guys like LeBron and like Anthony Davis. So they could very well maybe go into the top 5, but they could fall into the mid-teens. Who knows?
It's tough to rank a team like that. At 9, we have the Milwaukee Bucks.
And the Milwaukee Bucks, again, a lot of teams got off to a bad start, but the champs look like they're back right now, and they're winning a lot of games without Chris Middleton. He's been out for a while with COVID right now. And the fact that they are winning these games, the fact that Giannis still looks good without his main sidekick. if he's Batman, then he's without Robin right now. So, but the fact that they've been winning and the fact that they've clawed their way back to 500, I don't see them dropping any lower than this. I think it's just only looking forward to this point.
Yep. And then at 8, we have the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, Denver Nuggets. They're the best. They're the best defensive team in basketball right now. Big wins against the Suns, the Jazz, and the Heat. And I mean, their losses this year have also been solid losses to the Jazz, to the Cavs, and to the Grizzlies, who are all solid teams. I mean, obviously, you don't want to lose 2 games to the Grizzlies, but that's probably what drops them a little lower, which goes into their 7-4 ranking. I can't really put them any higher. But again, if that defense continues, if Jamal Murray is able to come back at some point this season, they're in a good spot.
Then at 7, another team that just, they're so pesky, you can't ever count them out, the LA Clippers.
Yeah, the Clippers, again, like we keep saying for all these good teams, they had a bad start, but they are one of the hottest teams in basketball right now, 6 straight wins, which puts them on par with the Suns and the Warriors for that type of win streak. Paul George has really put this team on his back, and the depth is showing up now. The depth was something that wasn't there in the first 3 to 4 games, and now it's finally here. So they've really bounced back from that 1-4 start. The Clippers are a team that, if they can continue this, and the question is, how long can Paul George carry a team like he carried them in the playoffs? Can he do it for a full 82 if Kawhi doesn't come back?
Yeah. And I mean, that's the question that will be answered throughout the season. But he's done it in Indiana, so he has the experience. It's a matter of if he has the health and if his talent can be what it was. And so far it has been.
Right.
Going into number 6, we have one of the best teams in the East, the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, and as of right now, as we film, technically the Washington Wizards are top of the Eastern Conference right now. But I have to put them 6th because there still are a lot of question marks around them. Because the newcomers have worked, but so far. Can Kyle Kuzma continue this pace? Can he continue to work with Dinwiddie and Montrezl Harrell? But, I mean, I have to put them in and around the top 5 here because they do have good wins. 2 wins against the Celtics, a win against the Raptors, the Bucks, the Cavaliers, who are all teams in the top half of this power ranking. So at 8-3, I got to show respect to the Wizards, and that's why they're at number 6.
Yep, and now we get into the top 5. They continue to dominate the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, and this is just a spot where I think the Jazz are going to stick, if not in the top 5, maybe 1 or 2 spots out of the top 5, but this is where they belong right now. Solid on both sides of the ball. Great wins against the Nuggets and the Bucks. This is a team that knows how to hang with the big boys in the NBA because, they are that silent big boy of the NBA right now. This is where they belong. They are a title contender, and that's why they're in the top 5.
Yep, and I mean, at number 4, we have a team that's run it back, and they continue to play good basketball, the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, and again, a 1-3 start, but they've won 6 straight games. Again, on par with the Clippers and the Warriors there. They have had an easier schedule to this point, but the fact of the matter is they're winning ball games after a bad start. So the Suns are a team that, like Utah, this is a spot where they belong in and around the top 5. So at number 4, that's a solid start for the Suns.
Yep, and then at 3, we have the dominant, the powerhouse, the team you expect to contend for that title, the favorite, the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, as they were our preseason number 1. So they have slipped to number 3, but that's just, again, a shaky start. But they do have, obviously when you have Kevin Durant, that's arguably the best scorer in the NBA, not named Steph Curry. They're making the most without Kyrie Irving right now. You'd expect a little more out of James Harden, but again, like Damian Lillard, he's been affected by this rule change of it's harder for him to get to the free throw line. So, but the Nets have bounced back. This is where you expect the Nets in the top 3.
Yep, and then at number 2, I don't think this is a surprise as they're a very good and deep team. They have all sorts of options. The Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, and I think the Chicago Bulls, it's a surprise that they're it's a surprise that they're in the top three. It's not a surprise that they're good. And it's the fact that the Bulls are winning with, again, such a hard schedule. They're beating teams like Brooklyn, night in and night out. The Big Four, that was the biggest question. They had the talent, but would it work together with Levine, Vucevic, Ball, and DeRozan? And it has. I mean, we have to see how they're going to do without Vucevic. He's in health and safety protocol for the next little while here, so how they can cope without their big man there. But I think when they have a top three defense and a dynamic offense, I think they'll be okay. They'll manage without him. Obviously, they may slip a little bit, but right now they certainly deserve to be a top two team, the best in the East, in my opinion.
Yep, and the best in the West, the best in the NBA. No signs of slowing down from the vets. The young guys are there. The Golden State Warriors are our number one pick.
They're back. The Warriors are back. They look like a legit title contender, and it's only going to get better when Klay Thompson comes back. Whether Klay Thompson is, the Klay Thompson we remembered before the injury, that's up for debate, but he certainly can't hurt this team here. They're the best offensive team in basketball, something we've come to expect over the years, and the second best defensive team too, which is quite the story without Klay Thompson, who he himself is an elite two-way player. They only trail the Denver Nuggets in that category there. The depth looks good with guys like Jordan Poole pulling up. Steph Curry looks back in MVP form, and it shows. The Golden State Warriors are where we expect them to be. And again, this is a team that has a legit title shot, and that's why they're number one right now on our power rankings for November. We'll see if they can continue this, though.
Yeah, it is a big question. There are a lot of areas where they can drop off and where teams can rise. It's a tough competition in the NBA right now, and we can expect that throughout the season, so there will be fluctuation.
Oh, for sure. So with that, that'll do it for our NBA power rankings for November. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other uploads. Comment down below what you think of our power rankings, which teams you think we have too low, which teams you think we have too high. Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.